What's going on, guys? Withany here, back with another League of Legends guide. This time we're going to be looking at Vayne. Now Vayne is a late game hyper carry with a lot of mobility which a lot of the other hyper carries don't have. However, in exchange for this she doesn't have a lot of range, so you have to use her ability to move around to your advantage. But let's get right into it and start looking at her abilities. Her Q is an empowered auto attack and a dash. This can be used as an auto attack reset when you use it up against a wall for a little bit faster damage output. It also can be used on towers, which it never used to be able to be done, so you can do a bit of extra damage to towers. And the last thing to note about her Q is that when you have used your ultimate, it makes you go invisible for 1 second. So this is what you've got to use in the later stages of the game to stay safe and kite around. Vayne's W is where a lot of her damage comes from. It's percentage max HP, true damage, scaling from I believe 6 to 14% of the target's maximum HP. This is really good against tanks and has a special interaction with Rage Blade that allows it to have an incredible 2-item power spike that a lot of ADCs don't have versus tanks. Vayne's E is Condemn. It pushes enemies back, and if you push them into a wall it will stun them for 1.5 seconds. It also applies a stack of True Silver Bolts, which means that you can auto attack them twice and then E them up a wall for extra damage. Another thing to note is that you can do an E flash, which is where you start the channel of your E, as there is a 0.5 second channel, and then flash last second to choose where they go. So in like a duel, you can reposition yourself with flash as you're channeling your E, and it gives them really no time to counter. Vayne's ultimate is an attack damage steroid that when you use Tumble will grant you invisibility for 1 second. On top of this, when you get a kill with Vayne, it will extend the duration of your ultimate for 4 seconds, and it also triples the passive movement speed that you get from your passive from 30 to 90. One thing to note about Vayne's passive though is that it only works whilst you can see the enemy and you're moving towards them. Okay, now let's get into Vayne's runes. In my opinion, she has 2 standard rune pages that can be used you can pretty much use for all her matchups. The first one being Press the Attack, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace, and then Gathering Storm and Celerity. I still like Celerity on her even after the nerfs because she gets movement speed from her passive, and Storm Razor, which gives her AD and converts it. It kind of works well with her kit. Now I use this rune page in matchups where I feel like I'm not going to be getting bullied too much, so I can trade. So low range AD carries like Vayne and Lucian and maybe even Ezreal, these kind of champions you can take this into because you know you're not going to get shoved in too hard, and you know you're not going to get bullied too hard, and you are able to trade back with them. However, the other rune page is a slightly more passive one. I say slightly more passive, it's a lot more passive. It's for lanes like Caitlyn, Morgana, Sona and Misfortune, ones where you're going to get bullied really hard and there's not really much you can do. So it's Fleet Footwork, Overheal for sustain, Legend Alacrity still, not Bloodline, then Coup de Grace or Cut Down. It depends if you're against lots of tanks, that can be applied to the first rune page as well. And then Bone Plating to try and negate damage that they do in those small trades that they do. And Chrysalis because it gives you 50 HP and then it converts into some AD for you. Now you can also go Second Wind instead of Chrysalis if you're really not confident about the matchup, and it will give you that extra regen, but personally I like, to get the 50 HP early on and then convert that into a bit of damage once you pick up some assists or some kills from ganks maybe. To me it feels like it's nicer moving into what you want to be doing in the mid game and the late game. And now let's quickly go through Vayne's item build, as it's not really too complex, and with the way the meta is at the moment you don't really get to invent or innovate too much. So you want to go Blade of the Ruin King early as your first item with attack speed boots or Tabi if they are full AD or they haven't got a lot of magic damage, or you're against a really hard lane like Draven. But it does kind of have to be backed up by other picks in their team. Anyway, moving on, then you want to go Rage Blade, and this, as I said earlier, gives you a really good 2-item power spike versus tanks and just any other champion. You just have to make sure that you keep up the stacks with minions. Then you can go Phantom Dancer or Static Shiv or Rapid Fire Cannon, either one of them. I prefer Phantom Dancer. And then going into maybe a Merc Scimitar or an Infinity Edge. It really depends what you need. If you feel like you need the Merc Scimitar, you can even go at third item. If you feel like you need a GA, if they've got a Fed Z, then you can do that third item. She is quite flexible, but there aren't really too many good AD items at the moment. So personally, that's what I build. I will normally go Blade of the Ruined King, Rage Blade, Phantom Dancer, Infinity Edge, and then maybe a Guardian Angel or a Static Shiv, depending on what I need. I'll also get a Merc Scimitar, obviously, but it's quite situational. Okay, so as you can probably tell by the rune segment, laning as Vayne can get pretty rough, and the clip you're about to watch is as rough as it gets really. It's Misfortune Brand as Vayne Bard. This lane's pretty bad. You just want to be farming until you've got your Blade of the Ruined King and maybe boots, and then try and look for a pick on one of them, but their pre-6 is better than you. They have better poke, they have better short trades, and once they hit 6 they have the wombo potential in the 2v2, so you realistically want to be getting jungle help. But outside of this lane, what you really want to be doing is pairing her up with a sustain support, maybe like a Nami or a Sona, because that means you don't struggle too much against the poke lanes and only against the kill lanes, and she does have quite a bit of mobility to be able to kite back and dodge skill shots like a Blitzcrank Q. Another thing to do is to pair up with a tank support like Braum or Alistar and just wait for jungle ganks, because then you have good setup with the CC from Braum passive or from Alistar, and then you can find a condemn and then the jungle can follow in, or you condemn after the jungle follows in. So that's what you do in lane really. You just want to farm for one item and boots, or one item like Bork and then your pickaxe into Rage Blade, and then you can start looking for fights. Bork's really good in lane because it gives you the sustain, so that's why it's such a big power spike when it comes to your laning phase as Vayne. Okay, so Vayne's mid game is actually not that bad, considering how bad her laning phase is. Once you've got Blade of the Ruined King and Rage Blade, she can sit in a side lane and farm pretty safely. Now what I'm not saying is that you're a split pushing threat and that you should split push, and try and 1v2, 1v3 all the time. But what it does mean is that you don't have to be scared to go and farm in a side lane because there's a Tryndamere and he'll chase you down, because you've got so much mobility and the condemn. You can farm pretty safely in a side lane. Now also with your 2 item power spike, as I said before, you are very good at killing tanks with these 2 items, so the team fighting is also something you can do, but it's like a mix of the 2 of them. You want to be able to get to your late game, so you don't want to force too hard. Champions like Lucian and Ezreal are still going to be a lot stronger than you in the mid game, but you are stronger than things like Azaya and Tristana, especially at shredding tanks. So if the enemy team have got like 2 tanks, then you can just hit the front line and know that you're going to be killing their front line a lot faster than they will be killing your front line. In mid-game skirmishes though, what you want to be doing is using your invisibility to try and change the momentum of the enemy. So if they think you're just going to keep kiting back, you can sometimes roll over them and use the full duration of your Q, as you're probably going to see a few times in these clips. And you don't want to be doing this all the time. It's only when they are fully using all their momentum in one direction you can switch it up. But the higher elo that you get, there are people that will know that you're going to do this, and then it becomes kind of a guessing game, a game of chicken. So you have to be good at mind games when you're playing this champion and trying to do that kind of aspect of her. Vayne's late game tank shredding is second only to Kog'Maw, so later on in the game what you can do is just hit the front line and wait for an opportunity to go forwards with using your ult and your invisibility to then take advantage of, like in a mobile backline like Misfortune and Brand. And then there's not really much they can do to counter you and say like another champion trying to dive on their backline, because of all your mobility and the invisibility. It's really hard for them to lock you down as long as you try and hold your Q for the skill shot that you know will cause you trouble. For example, if it's Brand that you're on, you need to hold it for the Q so that you don't get stunned, because if you do get stunned then you can be locked down for 1.5 seconds and you'll probably die in that 1.5 seconds because you're on their backline. Another thing to note is once you're in the late game, it's not just your on hit that is going to be dealing the damage. You will have 2 crit items, assuming that there aren't any champions like Malzahar that force you to have a Merc Scimitar. So it's not only going to be your true silver bolts that are dealing damage, but you'll also be pumping out true damage crits thanks to the new Infinity Edge. You can really easily outplay their front line time, because your Q is going to be on a 2-second cooldown, or even less if you have any kind of CDR, and you can just dodge the skill shots. For example, in one of the replays, Darius tries to pull me and you can just roll out of it with the reactions. It's pretty easy to outplay the front line, and this is why Vayne's one of the best champions late game for dealing with frontline champions like the Darius, like Sion. Even a Nocturne that dives on you, he can't really do much once you go invisible and buy yourself a bit of time to reposition. He has to then try and get on you again. So always remember to hold your ultimate and your first Q for the cooldown that you know is going to deal you the most amount of trouble. So for example, the Nocturne ultimate. Okay, so that is the end of the guide though. I hope you guys really enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a comment. If you didn't, tell me why, you know, tell me what you guys feel like I missed out. Tell me what you guys learned. Just let me know in general. I haven't made a guide like this for a while, so I'm a little bit rusty, but I spent quite a lot of time on trying to make this as good as I could. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you around. Peace. One last little side note, I am going to be doing one guide a week, possibly two, but for the most part I'm only going to be doing one guide a week, followed by 2 or 3 side videos, some of them league, some of them not, as I discussed in a previous video. I've got a few fun videos coming up, so keep an eye out for those, but yeah, 1 or 2 guides a week, but for the most part, one guide a week. Alright, see you around guys.